Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. This is our Raw show for the week. As you can see again, if you've seen our TNA show, I'm running solo tonight. Sorry this is a couple days late. We've been trying to work it into our schedule. Unfortunately, Gary was not able to work it into his busy schedule, so I'm going to give you this review by myself. Now we're going to start off with the first segment of Monday Night Raw, the most heavily hyped segment of the show leading into it. We begin with Jerry Lawler in the ring, who brings out Y2J and Fandango for a dance-off. Now, I don't like the placement of this. I don't like the time it was given. I think it was given 18 minutes altogether before we even went to commercial break. Went on entirely too long. There's too much build-up. The dance segment was the thing with Summer Rae feigning an injury. If this was a 5-10 minute segment, including promos and everything, I would have been okay with it, but like I said, it went on way too long. It started the show off on a slow pace and kind of carried through the rest of the show, the pacing from that. I really, as you guys know if you've watched our show, I've been a fan of Fandango. I'm not a Fandango hater, and Y2J, Chris Jericho, is one of the absolute best there is in the business, so this could have went a whole lot better. It started Raw off on a bad note, and it just kept piling on after that. But we'll talk about that as we go. Our next match had Zack Ryder versus Ryback. Ryback goes over on Ryder rather easily, as he should with the pay-per-view coming up. I really just wish they could have done something better with Zack Ryder than what they've been doing. I hope the gimmick change that he's been teasing and showing little pieces of really gets him over and puts him in that upper echelon, at least at a Kofi Kingston level or a Wade Barrett level. I mean, the guy's got a lot of talent. He's got a lot of fans. A lot of people want to see this kid succeed, and I'm one of them. Now, our next match of the night, we have the Primetime Players versus Tons of Fun. Decent match. Primetime Players haven't really been given a lot of TV time lately, so people really weren't into this match. Tons of Funk really aren't getting over. You got two guys that could be booked as two vicious monsters, and you're playing them off as a joking, dancing bears, basically. I did like the end. I did like Darren Young cheating with the hair pick to the throat. I thought it was a nice ending, a nice way to put them over as their heels. Again, we're right on. The show's just gone off the tracks from the beginning, and this didn't put it back on. Now, our next segment, we had Teddy Long coming out talking about Dolph Ziggler predicament. Basically, if you haven't heard, which if you're watching the show, you probably have, Dolph Ziggler's had a pretty bad concussion and has retrograde amnesia from the concussion. Well, they were going to decide what was going to happen with his three-way ladder match at the pay-per-view. It's now a one-on-one match. It's going to be Jack Swagger versus Alberto Del Rio for the #1 contender. I'd just like to say kudos to the WWE. I thought this was absolutely the right decision, the right way to go with this. Taking the belt off of Ziggler in this manner would absolutely kill this push, which they already are kind of doing. I don't know if you guys noticed the trend with Money in the Bank winners, but their title runs have been booked very weakly, and they've been made to look very weak, at least in the initial run coming off of Money in the Bank. The only one I could think of that had a solid run and had a major, was pushed majorly, was Daniel Bryan a few years back. But other than that, they're usually losing. It usually shows them as kind of being a fluke. And Ziggler's way too talented for that. He's more than just a fluke. He's a guy that's worked his ass off to get to the top, and he deserves some time. I'm glad the decision they made. They also had another decision, which I don't know if you guys knew, but WWE has an app. Who knows? They only said it once every 15 seconds during the show. But you could vote on the app for who was going to face Big E Langston later. Either Alberto Del Rio or Jack Swagger. And we'll talk about that when we get into the match. Now the next thing we had Kofi Kingston versus Damian Sandow. I think probably this was the best match of the night. And that's not really saying much. Another set of guys that they really could be doing a lot more with that they're not. Sandow has shown the capabilities to be a top heel in this business, and Kofi Kingston has shown the capabilities of being one of the top faces in the history of the business. I mean, the kids love him. He's athletic. He's talented. He's someone I'm very high on. I just wish they would give him that extra shot. When they have given him more, he's excelled. His character's become stagnant because the writing for him has been stagnant. But it was overall, I think it was one of the better matches of the night. The next thing we had was Mark Henry and Sheamus doing a little. Mark Henry was going to call out Sheamus. He had a strap in the ring. Sheamus eventually comes out. He pulls a strap from under the ring. They start swinging straps at each other, setting up the strap match at the pay-per-view with two of the weakest looking straps I ever seen. I mean, a strap should look like a belt or some really toughened leather, and this looked, I think they almost look rubber to me. Just my opinion. Oh, I did like what Mark Henry did. I believe it was with Josh Matthews dragging him around the ring, showing how you win the match. Don't quote me if I'm wrong. For some reason, I can't remember if it was Josh or Matt Stryker, but I do believe it was Josh. But I did like that aspect. This has the potential to be a good match at the pay-per-view, not a great match. I think people are going to be surprised. Sheamus has shown that he can be awfully brutal when he wants to be, and so has Mark Henry. I think if they let him be as brutal as they want, this will be an outstanding match. Now, speaking of brutality, we're going to go into our question of the week from last week. First, it was basically, would you like to see Brock have another run with the World Championship? And we'll go into some of the answers from some of you guys, our friends out there. First is from our friend Aaron Least. I wouldn't mind Lesnar being champ as long as he shows up for Raw and maybe a SmackDown or two. The Rock missing a bunch of Raws just left a bad taste in my mouth having a part-time champion. Next opinion is from our friend Lou over at the Deadly Sins. I see Brock fighting for the WWF Championship, or WWE Championship, I'm sorry. If Cena beats Ryback, then they could do Cena Brock 2. If Ryback wins, that would help Ryback into becoming a main event guy. My question is, which match would you guys like to see, Cena Brock 2 or Ryback versus Brock? That's a good question, Lou. I'm going to address that right here. I would actually like to see Cena Brock 2. I'm one of the few people that really liked Cena and Brock's match from last year. When these two came into the WWE around the same time, I expected that to be the major feud going forward, was these two guys kind of like Austin and The Rock, kind of an on-again, off-again feud. When Brock left, it took that away from me. I think if Brock would have stayed, he would have been seen as equal, if not seen as better. And I really enjoy, every time they've hooked up, I've enjoyed their matches. I wouldn't mind seeing Ryback versus Brock, but I know what I'm getting with Cena Brock, and I like it. Our next answer is from Mike Kierwan 1237. Brock could get the championship and make it better than it already is. And last but not least, our good friend Closure Thomas, like Thomas, except for with a D. Gotta let the A's breathe, Closure. I wouldn't mind seeing Brock win another WWE title, and like what Aaron said, just as long as he's on TV more often. He could be beating people up or just have Heyman hype him up in the ring or backstage, just not showing up every 2 to 3 weeks like The Rock did. I see the argument, and it's the same argument I was going to make. I know they have a limited schedule and they have limited dates. If he was to win the championship, I would like to see where they used, either they add some dates, give him extra money, and keep him there showing up at every Monday Night Raw for a 2-month period. You guys are absolutely right with The Rock leading up to WrestleMania being gone 2-3 weeks at a time. That was absolute horse shit. Your main guy needs to be there. I would love to see Brock Lesnar as win another championship. I absolutely think he could be a monstrous draw for the company, and he's a guy that John Cena chasing for the title, or another face. Doesn't have to be Cena, just probably who they would choose, but or CM Punk on his way back. Somebody chasing him. I think it would really add to the belt going after him. Even a guy like Alberto Del Rio, who's gotten a lukewarm reaction to his face turn. I liked it. I think he's lost some steam on it, but I liked it at first. Him chasing after Brock Lesnar and maybe even beating Brock Lesnar would do wonders for his career and his face turn. So I would absolutely love to see it for him to elevate somebody else. Now, coming off of that, our question of the week for this week. We've had the dance-off, we had tons of funk. Got me thinking. What has been your favorite dancing wrestler? Now, it doesn't have to be their primary gimmick. It doesn't have to be tons of funk that dance every time. Could be Flash Funk, Ernest the Cat Miller. I mean, we've had tons of them. JYD, the Junkyard Dog, dancing. It's through the history of wrestling. There have been tons of wrestlers that have danced. Who's been your favorite? Which one entertained you the most? Let us know what you think. Hit us up on our Twitter. Hit us up on our Facebook. Put it down where? Right down there in the comments. No bat. That's Gary's thing. I told you guys. But going right back into the show, we had Antonio Cesaro versus Randy Orton in a rematch from an excellent match on Main Event. I mention that because a lot of people don't watch Main Event. The match at Main Event was 1,000,000 times better than this. This was a Randy Orton squash. The Main Event match, although Orton won, Cesaro looked like his equal, and he kept up with him, and Orton allowed him to keep up with him. Whereas this, when they're on Monday Night Raw, where the whole world is watching, pardon the pun, Orton destroys him in 3 minutes. Again, back on what I was saying about this being an overall terrible and boring Raw. This is something we could see that we've seen, at least I've seen, I don't know how many of you watched it, them have a better match within a week of this match. So they could do a lot better if given time and let to do what they can. I am more compelled to see I am more interested in a match that's a fairly fought match than I am in a destruction. Now, don't get me wrong. A Biggie Langston destroying someone, a Mark Henry destroying someone, Ryback, it works with their gimmick. Randy Orton is not a destroyer. Randy Orton is a cerebral assassin, pardon the pun. He's someone that he's a chess player. He outmoves you to get to the win. And so is Antonio Cesaro. And this should have been a chess match where it ended much like the Main Event match did, with them reversing each other's moves and Orton or Cesaro coming out on top. My opinion. Next we had the return of Miz going up against Heath Slater. I don't know if it was Miz was rusty, but I was not into this match at all. Could be by this point I didn't give a shit about what was going on Raw, or it could just be the match. He ended with the absolutely terrible figure 4. I really want them to go back to the skull crushing finale because it's not his character. It's not working with him. Let somebody else have the figure 4. Let Miz go back to being the Miz. Don't let him stop trying to make him Ric Flair because he's not Ric Flair, and that's not a bad thing. The Miz is the Miz. The Miz does his own thing. When booked properly and done right, the Miz is a very viable character. He's not one of my favorites, but he's very viable. However, using him as Ric Flair's understudy, I think it's terrible. I think it's horseshit. I think it would be better suited for a different wrestler than him, and I think that it hurts Miz's character and overall development. Now, the next match we had, I know I said earlier that Kofi vs. Sandow was the best match of the night, but I forgot this match happened and I wasn't looking all the way down the board. We had The Shield versus Hell No and Cena in a 6-man elimination match. That was absolutely great. The Shield has not disappointed yet. Team Hell No is awesome. John Cena was great in this match, and I know you guys aren't used to me saying that. When John Cena is put in high-profile situations, he absolutely performs, and he absolutely proves that he deserves to be there. Just look at his match at Money in the Bank a couple of years back versus CM Punk. He absolutely looked great in that. Like I said earlier, his match with Brock Lesnar last year absolutely looked great. The guy can go when he's put in the right situations. I thought this was a fantastic match. I liked how they disqualified Kane for him to get eliminated. Then Bryan gets eliminated. It's down to 3-on-1 on Cena. Reigns gets eliminated. Cena knocks out Rollins. Looks like he's going to take out Ambrose to get the sweep on the Shield. And the Shield comes in and destroys him. Thus, their first 6-man tag lost. It's a disqualification, but it's a loss. They destroy him, leave him in the ring. Ryback comes down, goes in the ring, gets out of the ring, pretends like he's not going to do nothing, comes back with a chair, hits Cena in his bad ankle, hyping up their pay-per-view match. I thought this was booked extremely well. I think this should have went on as the finisher of the show. The show should have ended with Ryback walking away off the stage like they've done so many other times. It's a perfect fit for it. However, we'll get into the ending later. But overall, I think it was the best match of the night. Next, we had Big E Langston versus the winner of the poll on the WWE app. Mentioned it twice. I still got 750 more before I beat Michael Cole. Big E Langston, and the winner was Jack Swagger. And the announcers looked legitimately surprised. I was surprised. I expected Del Rio to win. I guess I'm more of a fan of Del Rio than the viewing audience is. But Swagger wins. They try to play it off. They want to see the heels on each other. He wins the thing. It was a decent match. Nothing great. It ends up everybody gets involved at the end. More hype for the pay-per-view, which is totally fine with this being the go-home show. Now our next match, and I've talked about this has been a recurring theme throughout the show, other than the fact that it's terribly boring, is a very weirdly placed AJ Lee versus Natalya match. A good match. This being the highlight match of the night, I think it's really weirdly paced. I would have liked to see Hell No and Cena versus Shield here. Big E versus Swagger would have worked better here. Even Ryder versus Ryback would have worked better here, in my opinion. Not to take anything from the match, this was a good Divas match. AJ used the Black Widow finisher, which kind of almost looked like something that Tajiri would have brought out of. Good finisher. She got Natalya to tap, making us believe that AJ is going to be a legitimate contender for Caitlyn's title. Decent match, weirdly placed. Now the next thing, we have Triple H standing in the ring. The cage lowers down. He talks junk to Heyman and Lesnar. Basically calls Lesnar a chicken if Lesnar doesn't come in the ring. They do. They wrestle around, smash each other against the cage. Triple H throws Lesnar through the door. Lesnar tumbles out to the outside. They walk away. Show's over. Good. It was a good way to build up their match. Could it have been done at the 10 o'clock mark? Yes. Again, really weirdly placed things on this show. I think they just took it, shuffled it around, and said, boom, here's how it's going. You're going to go here, you're going to go here. And that's how it went. But we're going to go right into our ratings on this. If you've watched the show before, we go 1, 2, 5. 1 being the lowest, 5 being the best. A 1's a John Cena, a 2's a Big Show, 3's a Sheamus, 4's a Daniel Bryan, 5's a CM Punk. I'm giving this a number 1, a John Cena. I think this was an absolutely boring Monday Night Raw. Shield versus Hell No and Cena was good, not great. They've had better. It was the best match of the night. Kofi versus Sandow was a decent match. To me, everything was paced weird. From the beginning of the show, it lost my interest, and then nothing ever really got it back, to be honest with you. The only reason I watched it through and didn't stop watching and come back and watch it on DVR is so I could do this review. And that's being perfectly honest. This was it was an absolutely terrible Monday Night Raw. It's a number one in my opinion. I didn't see anything I truly enjoyed or groundbreaking, especially with a go-home show for a pay-per-view. Nothing really sold the pay-per-view to me. But basically, that's all I gotta say. My name is George Coles, and this has been another Heel Heat review show.